It is time for our monthly check-in with with Earl Foote, from Nexus IT. Earl is here joining us virtually to give us some great tech tips. Earl, thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Looking forward to this conversation because many people are affected now by telehealth. So many appointments are going virtual, but there's things that we need to consider, especially from a tech standpoint. So looking forward to digging into this topic.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Christine, it's very common now that many of us are beginning to leverage more than ever the opportunity to use telehealth. I know that myself and my family have during the COVID pandemic ourselves, and it's become very convenient to not have to make an appointment and wait for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks or more to get in to see a doctor. When you can simply open up an application and sometimes within 10 or 15 minutes, be connected to a doctor and be talking about whatever's going on and getting some help. Certainly there are some privacy concerns, some confidentiality concerns when you're engaging in telehealth. First of all, I think it's important for the public to know that that healthcare providers, by regulation, by law, are required to be HIPAA compliant. That means that they are being good stewards of the data. Now, in a perfect world, that would mean that all healthcare providers are taking all the proper precautions and all the proper measures to protect your data and to protect that telehealth experience. I'm not here to blow whistles or to name names, but I can tell you from our experience in often being called in to do assessments and evaluations, security assessments and evaluations for healthcare providers, that while many of them attest to be HIPAA compliant, the reality is that their data security measures that they take on the back end are poor at best. And that's certainly a concern. So I think, first of all, the first thing I would recommend is you have the right to ask your healthcare provider if they are HIPAA compliant, and you actually have the right to ask them to provide you with attestation of that, or to provide you with certification that they are HIPAA compliant and that they are being good stewards of your personal and private data. You also need to be cognizant and careful about what devices you're using and how you're using those when you do a telehealth visit. Shared computers, let's say you're at the library and decide you want to use the computer at the library to do a telehealth visit. First of all, that's probably not a good place because you're in a public place where people, are standing behind you and can listen in on your conversation. But any shared computer is probably not the best place to carry out a telehealth visit. And then unprotected devices are also not a good place. And here's another unfortunate reality, and that is that most consumers and even businesses, the reality is they take a very laissez-faire approach to their own security, their own privacy, and I would say that upwards of 50% of personal computers that we see out there have no sort of what we call endpoint protection, or what is more widely known or more historically known as antivirus or anti-malware software. And so I would make sure that your personal devices are protected. Make sure that you've got software on there to keep them safe. If the device is already compromised, which is unfortunately extremely common for consumers or businesses to have a device that's compromised for months on end before that even becomes before they're even aware that is a situation. But if it's compromised and you're doing a telehealth visit, obviously a cyber criminal has the ability to extrapolate a lot of information from that telehealth visit, personal information about you, potentially social security numbers, your credit card numbers, and of course your health conditions that they can use to then target you directly with phishing scams, with other fraudulent activity or scams. Um, I would encourage consumers to just be aware of what your privacy and confidentiality rights are, and just be smart, be careful. Um, One other small piece of advice is on particularly mobile devices and mobile applications. Um, Make sure that that application is only enabled to use your camera on the mobile device when the application is in use. Um, and that goes for any application that can use your camera on your mobile device. Those are settings that you can find within the settings application within either your iOS, your Apple or Android devices, and you want to lock down the application so they can only access the camera when the application is in use, because otherwise they do pose a vulnerability where a cyber criminal can exploit that camera and then actually be using the camera to watch you when you don't know, or obviously don't want them to watch you. Um, Anyways, what other questions do you have, Christine?
Well, I'm curious, when people are embarking on these telehealth visits, you mentioned there's all these things to consider, confidentiality being very high on the list and privacy. What if individuals are feeling very overwhelmed? They have a telehealth appointment coming up, they understand why it's important to do their appointment this way. How can they find that help that they need to feel secure within that appointment?
Yeah, I would encourage them to reach out to their healthcare provider and ask the questions of what that provider is doing to make sure that their telehealth visit is secure for them. And most definitely, if they need a professional opinion, if they're concerned about the security of their device or the situation, reach out to a professional like Nexus IT.
And something else that you brought up, using a shared computer isn't a good idea, but when you think about mental health, telehealth appointments, may be hard if you're using your home computer, if you have everyone at home with you, your family, roommates, to find that privacy. Any suggestions for that?
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, if you're in a shared living environment, find a private space for sure. If it's your family, you may not be as concerned. Certainly, there are appointments that you're not going to do with your kids around, and so you want to find a place that is secure for you. But I would certainly recommend, before doing a telehealth appointment, to again make sure that you have uh, an effective antivirus or endpoint security program. Make sure it's up to date. I would do a full scan of your computer to make sure that there are no existing vulnerabilities that may pose an issue during that telehealth visit. Um, so I would just take proper precautions and proper measures to make sure that you're keeping yourself and your data safe.
And Earl, before we let you go, I'm just curious, with Nexus IT, are you still primarily working at home? I know we've talked about businesses opening up, security and safety issues that surround that, but how are things going at Nexus?
Yeah, thank you for asking. We're doing a blend right now. Certainly, particularly in our own state and our own town, we're beginning to see some numbers creep back up. I think numbers of cases, not necessarily active cases, right? And I think that's what we need to be cognizant of. But there's some concern, coming to light again, because case numbers are beginning to increase. And anyway, so we're continuing to do a bit of a blended model. There are a few people that are working in our office. We're taking all the proper precautions there, in disinfecting and physically distancing within the office, and several other measures that we are taking. And yes, a good portion of our team are still working from home. We are hoping, and we'll see what happens here in the coming days with state and local, government guidelines that are issued. But we are hoping to kind of begin to get the team over the next couple of months back into the office a little bit more. We're actually opening a new office in Salt Lake, and in the process of moving our Park City office right now. And so we're hoping to leverage that, those new office spaces and get more of our team back into the office and working in a collaborative space together in the coming days.
Well, Earl, it's always nice to talk with you. I always learn things about tech. It's interesting and helps us navigate, especially during this time where we are spending more time online. So thanks for joining us, Earl Foote from Nexus IT.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
All right, we'll be back with more right after this.